Welcome to an occasional MCR op-ed. I'm Mayank Chaya. In Kamala Harris, whose nomination as the Democratic Party's presidential candidate is a near certainty now, the Indian American community with whom she shares heritage partly has a compelling choice. Even though Harris, who is 59, has predominantly projected her black identity from her Jamaican father's side ever since she ran to become California's first female Attorney General, and that too the first Indian American and African American to boot, she has been assertively proud of her Tamilian side as well. Raised by her late breast cancer researcher mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris, after her divorce from her Jamaican American husband, Donald Harris, an economist and professor of economics, Harris wrote in her 2018 memoir, The Truths We Hold, An American Journey, and I quote now, "My mother knew very well that she was raising two black daughters. She knew that her adopted homeland would see me and Maya as black girls, and she was determined to make sure we would grow into confident, proud black women," unquote. At the same time, Harris also writes in the memoir about her mother, grandparents, aunts, and uncle having instilled the two sisters with pride in their South Asian roots. I quote again, "Our classical Indian names, her full name is Kamala Devi, hark back to our heritage, and we were raised with a strong awareness and appreciation for Indian culture. All of my mother's words of affection and frustration came out in her mother tongue, which seems fitting to me since the purity of those emotions is what I associate with my mother most of all," unquote. Kamala and Maya were raised in a predominantly African American neighborhood in Berkeley, California, quite consciously by their mother. It was in keeping with that approach that Harris attended Harvard University, the highly respected black college. For the 4.4 million Indian American community, Harris's rise as the first woman and partly Indian American vice president was historic enough. Now they confront even greater prospects of voting for someone who could become America's first ever woman president, her biracial heritage being intrinsic to it. Historically, the Indian American community has tended to vote Democratic, but in recent years there has been some shift, with many going the Republican Donald Trump way, especially among those who gravitate towards Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Bharatiya Janata Party. In fact, many Indian Americans of strongly Hindutva persuasion are quick to point out that not only does Harris consider herself as an African American with Christian values, but even as someone who would be anti-India in their words when it comes to issues such as Kashmir and Modi's right-wing politics. That Trump's vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance is married to Usha Vance Nee Chilukuri of Indian immigrant parents from Andhra Pradesh is the latest example of growing Indian American presence on the right. Nikki Haley, former South Carolina governor and U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and businessman Vivek Ramaswamy, both of whom unsuccessfully tried to seek the Republican nomination, are two other prominent names. Those Indian Americans who do not see Harris as Indian enough in her cultural and religious convictions do not seem to recognize that geostrategic considerations that would drive her as a potential president would have nothing to do with her personal convictions, but India's global ascendancy, particularly in the context of the Indo-Pacific vis-a-vis China. Notwithstanding the misgivings, Kamala Devi Harris has already become a figure of history, not for just the Indian American community, but for America as a whole, whether or not she wins the 2024 election, assuming she eventually gets the Democratic nomination.